But there's many questions that we know that.
The reason we're trying to answer them because there is answers to them.
No.
Potential answers
No. This is the whole point.
We don't know them yet.
No.
We will discover them.
We say there might not be an answer to this. There may be no answer to this, but
we may never know the answer to it, but there probably is still an answer.
Could be.
But we may never know. That's a different point.
If there was no answer to a question, it's not a question.
Yeah.
How would you say that? Why would you say that?
Okay.
Why would you even say that?
Today is Sunday. What question have I asked?
This is just one question.
No. What question have I asked? Today is Sunday.
You just made a statement. You didn't ask a question.
No, I've asked you a question. Please answer. Today is Sunday.
This is a statement. It's not an answer.
That's the point.
Now, I have asked you a question. Today is Sunday. Now, can you answer that, please?
Yes, it's a Sunday. You're right.
I'm just saying today is Sunday. What question have I asked?
I said you're right. I agreed with you. Even if you asked a question, I agreed with you.
And
if you didn't ask a question,
what is my question? What is my question? I haven't asked a question, have I?
But I've asked you whether you asked a question.
Sorry, dude.
It's because it's not going to reach his voice.
That's right, brother.
Oh, sorry. What question have I asked?
You said yourself. I asked you, it's not a question. You made a statement.
So now you realize the distinction between statements and questions.
I told you when you asked the question for the
Right.
first time, I said it's a statement,
Good.
sir.
So when we say there are absolute beings, because if something exists now, there has to be the existence of an absolute entity always. That's the given thing. You can't really question it.
Why not? Why can't you question?
Now, let's take it all the way. If something exists now, two options.
What's your name?
Mansur, Najibullah, Mansur.
Listen, let me. Circles. It's going to be circles. Let's stick to one point and try
That's
to
the one
explain,
point
yeah?
we're trying to achieve.
So, my standard of proof, as you said, is by testimony. Then I was trying to explain to you, look, it's not just testimony, it might be testimony in this minute matter of my life, but when it comes to judging the world, I go by logic, I go by scientific method, I go by evidence.
Fine. I have no problem with any of that.
I pay much more attention to it.
Good.
Okay?
That's what we're trying to do
So
in this discussion.
It's not just the testimony.
Absolutely
of somebody.
not. I didn't say it is. I'm simply saying, if you bring forward just saying, oh, it's my five senses, the tools that I have, and then I brought this example for change that it wasn't your five senses, it was something else. It was the testimony that you accepted without any kind of experimentation of any kind.
When I was telling you about my
So we've
senses,
cleared that up. So we have cleared
So
it.
we're going to underpin the point you're trying to make. Are you trying to argue that God's existence can be rationally justified?
Yes.
Completely rational.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can any other
There are other
viewpoints
methods.
be rationally justified? Can any other viewpoints, for example, a non-existent of God, be rationally justified?
You can try. That's
but
what
it's a
I'm.
question.
That's what I'm trying to do. Saying if something exists now, there has to be always something. So if there was no God, then you have to now come with an explanation about the reality, that the reality can exist without having any prior something. That means you have a concept where there's nothing, and this nothing produces something. So it wasn't nothing in the first place then, because if nothing produces something, that was something, because it has to have something to produce it.
Okay,
If you have a concept of nothing,
this is
like say God nothing,
It's the argument of design.
it's a multifaceted. If you have a God, let's call this God nothing, right? This God has no power, no consciousness, no will. Can this God make anything?
Yeah.
No energy.
Why not? No, if the God has no energy,
Yeah.
how would he exist?
So
How would he exist?
Good. That's the sake of argument. Let's say this God exists with nothing,
But
right?
then he cannot exist.
Good. So now you realize if you have such a concept of nothingness, this universe could not be the result of such nothingness. That means there is a higher existence who brought this reality in place. And that is what I'm saying is your proof for existence of God.
The classic argument of the argument of design is if someone created this earth, who created the creator?
There's no point.
It's easy to
This is
answer.
an existential question.
Okay. The question is not about anything that begins to exist requires a cause, or anything that is complex requires a cause. What is it? Because people misunderstand this Kalam cosmological argument and various other forms of this. What we are saying is, look, the creator, we are not saying the creator is created. Our concept of creator is uncreated. uncaused.
No, but we're
And how do we establish this? We can establish this by reason. Your five senses, your brain. That if we have something now,
And evidence.
that's the evidence I'm giving you.
It's not just
But
evidence.
I'm not
That
sure, I'm not
that
sure.
that
If
this.
you're arguing that something has created something, that's what you're arguing.
No, I'm saying
He's saying his particular God
this
created
cosmos is created by something that always exists. Now, how do you then question an entity that always exists and say, who made that entity? Because that entity always exists. Your question becomes meaningless.
So
It's not a meaningful question anymore.
The nothing.
The question has to be meaningful. How do you say, who created the uncreated creator? It doesn't make any sense.
It does. It does.
Because who created the uncreated?
Then it's a regression. It's an infinite
You
regression.
already made an assumption that's been uncreated.
Yeah.
No, I'm saying,
Not by logical proof.
I just gave you the logical proof. You exist, something has to always exist.
In what? If that something has
In
to
existence.
exist in what?
In existence.
In what existence?
So that existence that
In what
always
existence?
exists
What dimensions he has? That he has a
is,
space time.
is not nothingness.
okay.
Here's the jump. Here's the jump which you're making. That something which exists. The jump which you've made that has to be a creator.
I'm saying that something now is an entity that exists always. What are the
what?
properties?
So how do we know
In
that was
what?
created?
Let's examine what it is now. If something exists always,
Does that mean it's created?
But he has to
no,
exist
let's
in something,
understand.
right? He has to exist in
If
something.
something exists always, what are the essential characteristics and properties that something has?
That okay, first property would be that he has to exist in something. First property would be that he has to exist in something.
So why in something?
Why not? Do you know of an existence out of something?
No, that's the limitation of our universe,
How would you
our
know?
cosmos.
How would you know that he has the
What
he does
we
not have-
establish, the essential characteristics is the existence of this something being. That thing
through
exists.
this rationale, and this rationale tells us that something has to exist in something.
I think you.
What is
same
some,
rationale.
What is okay? Something. When you say
Through
something,
this rationale, you said we said something exists.
I say
through
something
the
exists
same
always.
rationale, always exists, and through the same rationale, we have to conclude that that something has to exist in something.
Now, when you say in something, let me explain to you what I mean. In somewhere, this place or locus or location is a matter of understanding from what?
Okay, a place.
Philosophy and science.
place.
Do you know what?
A place could be science and space and time. A place could be many different things we don't know. So we can say
Space.
let
Do
me
you know
just
what
say something.
space is?
Let me just say something. So if this being is maybe in a parallel universe, and he pretends to be, and he has sufficient technology to create a universe, and probably by chance we've been created, or maybe he designed that. So he's an alien. He could be an alien then.
I think no.
How would you undefine
I
it?
know. Hear me. I understand the point. I think what you're trying to say, and what I agree with, is that if there is existence in everything you're saying, what makes it? What
makes it God?
No. What I'm saying is there's no end to it.
There's no end to it.
So if there's no end to their argument of existence, by bringing a creator into the argument, it's assuming an end. By logic.
No, not assuming an end.
And
The creator, we were saying the creator is the originator of our cosmos. If we have something that exists always, there has to be some essential properties of this something. Has to be. It has to have properties. It cannot be given power by something else because there is no something
I'm
else.
not sure you understand my point. I think the point is that if you're arguing that existence always exists,
Yeah.
what you're trying to say, then what existed before then? Because there always has to be
Let's
some level of
let's
existence.
understand that step by step.
Assuming an infinite end.
Let's understand step by step. Imagine now, this is this something, like this point, right? This something, either there is something prior to it, or there isn't. Yeah?
Are you arguing this is existence?
Mansur, let me conclude.
That existence that always exists, either this is always that particular reality of that existence, or there is something prior to this form.
Could be.
Yeah? Two possibilities, isn't it? If you have something prior to this form, then it's ad infinitum, it goes on and on, right?
That's what I'm arguing.
Agree. So let's use that argument. What I'm saying is, whatever that form that is ad infinitum, it has essential properties. Has to have. If it doesn't have essential properties of existence, if it doesn't have essential properties of having energy, then it's not going to produce anything. We won't be here. So it has what we call inherent characteristics.
And what's the argument from then and then to
No,
the
no.
creator?
From inherent characteristics, I'm saying, if it has energy, that energy will be unbound, unrestricted, unlimited, absolute. If it has existence, this life will be totally unbound, unrestricted. That's
cannot
the
justify
only
this-
logical
no,
conclusion that you can arrive.
No. There's plenty others. Let's see. Okay,
Show me otherwise.
I'll show you now. So, a being exists in another universe, in a parallel universe, okay? He has the power. He's just like you and me, common citizen, but he has the technology and he's the power to create another universe. Now they're so advanced. He creates another universe in another dimension.
Okay.
And he declares himself to be a god, right? So he does not have infinite power now. He does not have infinite power now. His power is limited in his universe. He's just a normal being like you and me.
So you missed
understand?
my argument.
No, I didn't miss it. You said that's the only reality. I just gave you another one. Just another one. So
let's take your God.
not even
No,
go
no,
there.
no, let's take that
Mansur,
God.
let's not even go there. I'm telling
Let's
you.
take that God, right?
I'm telling
That
you.
God didn't have a beginning.
This is a circular argument.
No.
Let me ask you.
I want to understand the concept of God that you've provided. That God in a parallel universe, did it have a beginning?
Yeah. He was born, but now they've
And
discovered.
it's not God.
And now they've discovered.
Simply, it's not God.
And now they've
I think
discovered.
the point is that in order
Now
to
they've
believe in a
discovered-
God, there has to be a jump in belief.
That's not a jump in belief. This is an only rational conclusion.
No,
You
let's
are
say
right.
that God-
There has
Yeah,
to be
but
something
Mansur,
always.
Mansur, the God is
And-
born,
What I'm trying to say-
but now they're like undead. Now like the immortals, right? They've discovered the technology of
I want to
immortals,
see
and he tells us to
what your
believe that way.
objections are on
It's
this.
not an objection, it's a question.
Okay.
The question which I want to ask
Yeah.
is, how is there a jump between the idea of existence from where you're arguing that everything has an existence to then the idea of a creator existing?
Sure.
And that's what I want.
So I said, this existence that always has to exist, either it go ad infinitum or, it's the first cause of everything. Okay? You cannot escape these options.
Okay, say we
So,
assume.
so what?
But from that option, let's say.
From
we
that
assume
options- from that
we say
option-
we go for the infinite route.
Yeah.
So if we go with the infinite route, how would you then respond to say the creator?
Okay. So what I'm saying is, if you go in infinite, that means the more you go, the more powerful that thing is.
And this absolute.
As you go back in time, the thing that created or originated the other thing that brought this universe is more powerful, and you go back more powerful. You see, and you come to a point where the more back in time, in crudest understanding, you go there, you come to a being which is absolute in everything, in terms of existence, in knowledge, in power.
So we've argued. No, hear me out. No,
it's a main
hear me
point.
out. We've argued there's an infinite end. Just with your definition of an existence, there's an infinite end. Now, what
Or
you're-
end, you're saying,
Yeah, an
or first cause.
Or infinite cause and end.
Yeah.
And what I'm trying to get the answer out of, it's a question, it's not a debate. What I'm trying to ask is that we've assumed that there is an infinite start. Why have you assumed that we go further back and becomes more and more powerful?
No, if there is
by
no
that
end.
definition
No,
assumes a
if,
start.
no, if there was no start, you're saying. If it goes on like this, do you follow rationally that the more you go back, the more powerful it is? So eventually you're coming to a
it not
concept
say
of
constant?
But how does it come to a concept of a start? That's what I was
No, you have to come to a concept where there has to be an existent reality which is absolute. Because otherwise, you would not explain any of this limited finite cosmos
so
at all.
far-
So there has to be this
And
concept.
that's the point, and that's
Yeah.
the point I want to make, is
Yeah.
that if there has to be an explanation for that, and we don't know or understand that explanation because the way in which the world we're living is
But
very
we've-
finite, why does there have to be an answer right now for it?
It's not about why does it have to be. There is an answer. So at least we understand that this reality that exists, which
why
brought.
do we now have to provide an answer?
It's not about how we provide. The reality is that existent reality, which we call the Creator God, Allah, has already communicated with us, saying, okay, I am Allah. Before me there was nothing. After me there was nothing. I alone am the majestic, the supreme, the most high. So these concepts, they resonate intellectually with us. Yes, I can understand that such a being can exist, because you cannot have another being before that. There has to be a being like this.
Why it has to be?
I just told you. If you don't have this being,
It has to be. You put him on top. There's so many things that you give.
Okay.
Without justification.
this being sent prophets and messengers to make us confirm in our intellectual speculation, because that's all we were doing, speculating. So when this being sent prophets and messengers and sent guidance with scripture, like the Quran being the final one, this confirms that it is from this being.
Let me
So
ask a few
you need to ask us,
so far-
how do you
Let's go about it.
give evidence that the Quran is from this being?
Let's go.
That's what you should be asking.
Let's go about it. I haven't asked you a question yet. To what you are advocating, I haven't asked you a question. So far, it's just me trying to explain.
Yeah.
Now, the whole point. In the beginning, I've lost it. Where was he?
I think we're assuming about existence and the idea of it there being a start.
Okay. The whole point is that we go by a definition of this world that we can answer, which is answerable as you yourself said. Now, to the beginning, you say somebody created it. I say I don't know. Right? This is the main difference. You say you are for sure.
Are you willing to learn?
This,
Know the answer.
you see this?
I'm willing to learn. But are you willing to know the answer?
No. Here,
Assuming we have the answer.
no, you cannot see something over here.
You can't assume there isn't. If you assume there isn't, then there's no question.
You see, my point over here is I do not know. This means inherently that I'm willing to learn. I do not know, so I'm willing to learn. What you're doing
It
over
doesn't
here,
follow, but yes, I follow you then.
what does it mean? I do not know.
No, there are many people who don't know and they're not willing to learn.
No, that's-
they're stubborn people. But you're not one of them.
Admitting that, you see, one has to admit first that they do not know. Then that is the only way they can
Do
learn.
you care to know?
Sir, this is the...
You do.
Sir, this
But
is
there are
the reason.
people, I'm just saying, look,
it's people.
there are people who don't care to know.
That is fine.
So,
that is
let's
fine.
get past that.
so let's go past and say fine.
Okay,
So you want to
now-
know.
So
How would you
my
know?
position over here would be that I do not know. Right?
Okay.
It opens me a world of possibilities.
Okay.
One could be true.
Sure.
One could
So
be
now,
true, right? Now your point
let's
over here-
examine now how can know.
No.
That's the crucial
Let
point.
me say something.
So there you go. This
No,
is
no,
it's
Mantu,
important.
Mantu, let me say something.
How do we know?
You are saying that you know something.
Yes.
Yeah? And I'm saying I do not know something.
Okay.
Now I can learn because I'm saying I do not know it, so I can learn. But you cannot learn.
I said I cannot learn.
How would you learn? Because you know it already. You said you know how universe was
that
made.
you're speaking in a very cryptic way. If I knew everything,
No,
then
but
I
you-
have nothing to learn.
Do you know how universe
But do
was
I
made?
know everything? I don't.
Do you know who made the universe?
Yes.
You know it. Yeah?
I do.
So
Would you be
for
open
me,
to other suggestions?
no, exactly.
Just
now I can
out-
learn and you cannot. Because if
You
say-
can put forward
say-
your arguments,
No, no,
but
and I can
say-
examine
No,
them.
that's not the question. Would you be open?
No, if I'm convinced that I'm not a brain in a jar, you can give me all the other options, or maybe a computer simulation. Remember that I'm using this
You see,
reverse now on you.
There's just two positions over here. One is yours, one is mine. I say I do not know. I'm
I
willing
am
to learn.
saying
You already
there are
know the
other
first part.
possibilities and we can examine them. But I'm convinced of the possibilities that I have put forward. So I'm saying this Quran is from God and cannot be from other than God. Other than God. So I can give you explanations and reasons and evidence why this is from God, and you can reason with me saying, okay, not convincing, or otherwise. So if you can establish that this book is from God with certainty, then you know.